Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the East Gippsland Shire Council's meeting of Tuesday the 25th of June 2024. East Gippsland Shire Council live streams, records and publishes its meetings via webcasting. These recordings are available for viewing by the public. During the meeting, any members of the public who are attending the council will have their image and comments recorded. No other person has the right to record council meetings unless approval has been granted by the chair. In line with the Local Government Act 2020, councillors are able to attend council meetings electronically or in person, and the meetings will be open to public via live streaming. Members of the public are invited to view the live streamed council meetings by following the link on council's website or Facebook page. If council encounters technical difficulties with the live streaming during the meeting, we will adjourn until the issue is resolved. I'll just ask you to mute your computer there, Councillor Stowe, thank you. If technical issues cannot be resolved, then the meeting may be postponed to a later date or time. The East Gippsland Shire Council acknowledges the Gunai Kurnai, Monero and Bidwell people as the traditional custodians of this land that encompasses the East Gippsland Shire and their enduring relationship with country. The traditional custodians have cared for and nurtured East Gippsland for tens of thousands of years. Council value their living culture and practices and their right to self-determination. Council pays respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people living in East Gippsland, their elders past, present and future. A member's attendance can only be recorded as present at a council meeting when the member can confirm that they meet all of the following criteria. Firstly, that they can hear proceedings. Secondly, that they can see members in attendance and can be seen by other members. And thirdly, that they can be heard. I'll now confirm with each councillor in turn that they can see, hear and be heard by each other, and note assurance from each that the location they are participating from is secure to ensure confidential deliberations remain confidential. Councillor Reeves, can you see and hear us?
Good evening, Mayor. Yes, I can.
Thank you. And can you please ensure that the location you are participating from this evening is secure?
It certainly is secure.
Thank you. And Councillor Buckley, can you see and hear us?
Yes, I can, Mayor.
And can you confirm that you are participating in tonight's meeting from a secure location?
Indeed it is.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Do we have any apologies for this evening's meeting, CEO?
Thank you, Mayor. There are no apologies for this evening.
Agenda item 1.3 is declarations of conflict of interest. I'll now call for any declarations. Councillor Allen.
Yeah, I'll declare a conflict at 7.2, please, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Duly noted.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll declare a conflict at items 5.2.1 and 5.2.2, please.
Thank you, Ms Johnson. Agenda item number 1.4 is the confirmation of the previous council meeting minutes. I trust councillors have read the minutes. Could I have a motion that they are an accurate reflection of that meeting? Thank you, Councillor Stowe. Seconded, Councillor Uri. Councillor Stowe, would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Uri. Councillors, is that motion opposed? Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? No, in which case I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? And that motion is passed unanimously. Thank you, councillors. The next meeting of council, agenda item 1.5, council's next meeting will be held on the 16th of July here at the Corporate Centre at 273 Main Street, Bairnsdale, and I believe that meeting will be on a Tuesday and commence at 6 o'clock. 1.6 is request for leave of absence. CEO, have we had any requests?
No requests for leaves of absence, Mayor.
Thank you. And agenda item 1.7 is open forum. And I believe first up at 1.7.1 we have petitions. And I believe we do have a petition this evening.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, before you is a report presenting a petition submitted by Ian Neal from Newlands Arms, lodged on the 4th of June, that seeks a reduction to the speed limit along Birrells Road in Newlands Arms. Ian Neal is actually in the gallery tonight, so I'd now like to invite Ian to present his petition to the council.
Thank you, Ian, and welcome.
Thank you very much. Basically, if we take the risk factors of things, comes from likelihood and consequence. So if we modify some actions, the likelihood may change, the consequence may change. Now, the speed limit along Birrells Road, from particularly Lake Victoria Road down towards past the bend, heading down into Newlands Arms proper, is currently 100k an hour, as is most of Lake Victoria Road. The likelihood of something happening at the moment is reasonable to high. The consequence as a result of that happening is pretty high, because at 100k an hour, vehicles come together quite quickly, ends up with a problem. Now, along there's a lot of, particularly kangaroos, wombats and deer in particular. Now, some of the people going in and out of driveways basically go to come out and there's a car going past at 100k an hour. If we go to a normal roadworks and there's ambulances and police activity, we must slow down to 45k an hour to go past. We go out every Thursday night, put our bins out, we have to be within 1 metre of the curb, and cars can go past at 100k an hour. It's a problem. Then if we take Cr Court, if you come out of Cr Court on the Lake Victoria Road, the vision to the right and vision to the left is limited to probably about 80 metres, 90 metres, maybe 100 metres maybe. So people doing 100k an hour, closing speed's pretty good. On the bend at about 107 Birrells Road, heading down towards Newlands Arms, there is a bend. There is 3 properties there at least who go in and out with boats or caravans regularly. Every time they go to come out, someone comes whizzing past. The population in Newlands Arms has grown a lot. There's been a lot of tradies, there are a lot of cement trucks, there's a lot of tradespeople going past in a hurry to get to work and come home. And a lot of people now, the people of my generation, is decreasing, and it's the younger people with families. So we're getting a lot more traffic going to and from school. Those people, mothers, fathers, driving their kids to school in the morning, roaring past because they're in a hurry. My wife one time, a few years back, put the indicator on to go from Newlands Arms into our place, turned to the right. The person behind her thought that was an indication to go past. So as she's turning to the right, this car's going to whiz around. Now, this is pretty dangerous. Now, we know Newlands Arms only has 1 road in and 1 road out. And if something happens, there will be lockdown. So basically, a group of people have been proposing over a number of years, obviously, that the speed limit be reduced to reflect the current risks and therefore potentially mitigate the consequence as a result. Okay?
Very good. Thank you. Councillors, were there any questions of the petitioner just before you leave, sir? Ian? Jane, please go ahead.
Thanks, Ian, for coming in.
Thanks, Jane.
So you're talking about Birrells Road from Lake Victoria Road to the corner?
Well, yes, at the moment where you've got past the corner, it's farmland.
Yep.
And then the speed limit, which was 100k down to the community centre, was being dropped back to 80k
Yeah.
from, 240 or something. 240 being the address, not the speed.
Yes. Thank you.
But obviously, if you're going to end up with only 100 metres of 100k an hour, logic would say why.
Yes.
It only just annoys people.
Yeah. It is a potentially dangerous stretch with lots of wild animals and
Yeah, and the intersection there at Lake Victoria Road itself is, the number of times I go through it and you go through it, that you often see someone not stop.
Yep.
And they just roll through. They don't bother.
Yep. Thank you.
So,
Thank you, Councillor Greason. Councillor White, you had a question.
Thank you. That's, I think you just answered it, because I was wondering if the community centre actually was covered by a lesser speed,
Yeah.
the entrance in there. So that's at least good news.
yeah.
Any other questions, councillors? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Back to you, Ms Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Ian, for presenting that really well-constructed case to Council. The report recommends that Council receives the petition and forwards it to the General Manager of Assets and Environment for consideration and response. So, therefore, the report is presented for your consideration, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Buckley.
Yes, sir. I just have a question in regards to process. Once this motion, if it's accepted and it goes to the General Manager, what happens to it after response is compiled? I'm unclear on who makes the decisions around signage and speed limits. It's not in our jurisdiction, but we can advocate. Is that correct?
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. I might throw over to the Assets and Environment General Manager for that one.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. So, what would happen as a result is the officers would look at the circumstances, and if it's warranted, then make a recommendation through to Vic Roads in terms of speed limits. Department of Transport and Planning. There is then ultimately the requirement for their approval and decision making in relation to future speed limits. But certainly, as we look at this, the petition and our response to that, we'll certainly keep councillors informed of that response.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr McConnell. So, councillors, we do have an officer recommendation before us to accept the petition. Councillor Allen, happy to move that. Councillor Greason to second. Councillor Allen, would you like to speak to that motion?
No, only to say that it was a well-presented case, and I think it's something that needs to be looked at.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Councillor Greason?
No, thank you, Ian, for coming in. It will be looked at.
And is the motion opposed? Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? I see no hands, so in which case I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors, and thank you, petitioners. We will now move on to agenda item 1.7.2, which is questions of council. And I believe we have two lots of questions. The first are from Mr John Butler-Cole, and I believe, CEO, you are to read those questions.
Yes, as Mr Butler-Cole is not in the gallery tonight. He has two questions. I will read one and then ask for a response from the General Manager of Business Excellence and then move on to his second question. The first question is, how is Council addressing the 6 items identified by the 2023 Community Satisfaction Survey as needing action?
Thank you, CEO, and thanks for the question, Mr John Butler-Cole. There's more than 6 areas identified in the Community Satisfaction Survey, but it is a really good question. So the results play a crucial role in shaping our plans for the year ahead, and you can see many of the themes that are addressing the areas of the survey in the Annual Action Plan item at 5.1.3 in tonight's agenda. Council continues advocating for East Gippsland's interests across diverse areas, including the transition of the timber industry, funding for road improvements and reforming national disaster recovery funding. We've reviewed our engagement strategies, leveraging social media effectively to keep the community informed about upcoming events and capital works projects, which I hope you're seeing coming through as well. And our feedback collection efforts are expanding, focusing initially on library and service centre customers to make sure we're focused on asking the right questions to continue to respond to community feedback on how we deliver our services. And what that means is if you go to some of our service centres and some of the libraries, we've actually got little mobile units that tell you to rate our particular service for that given day. We're compiling those pieces of data which will all be added into how we're responding to meet community satisfaction more broadly.
Thank you, Ms Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor, and I will move on to the second question from Mr Butler-Cole, which is relating to the budget. What items of expenditure in the draft 2024-25 draft budget have been adjusted, delayed or eliminated to meet the 2.75% rate cap? And again, Ms Johnson, thank you.
Thank you, CEO, and thanks again, Mr John Butler-Cole, for a good question. So, look, there's numerous efficiencies that are built into the budget, and I will talk in more detail to them at the draft budget item tonight. But if I can talk to mainly the headline points. So we do, really focus here at Council on collaborative procurement. We've got shared services with the neighbouring council, and you can see through the budget that we're changing, and we're continuing to focus on changing the way that we do things. An example is the leasing of a caravan park to the public to create a commercial opportunity, which you would have seen recently in the public domain as well. That will represent in itself an operational saving of $400,000. Other operational savings that you'll see throughout the budget include the reduction in consultancy costs, because we have the capability to, in some consultancy costs, because for those consultancy costs we have the staff in-house capability to be able to deliver those. And the final one that I'll touch on is the reduced reliance on using what we term agency staff, which cost us more. But in using agency staff, we are able to do that again from an internal staff capability perspective. So there's some of the headlines in how we're making the savings to get to the 2.75%.
Thank you, Ms Johnson. And for those questions, Mr Butler-Cole. We also have a second questioner with us who I believe is here tonight, Mr Morris Borgelt, thank you. Welcome, Morris. And yes, please present your question. Or is it questions?
It's one question, two parts to the question, I suppose. I have noticed over the last, I have noticed over at least the last 2 years a large number of permanently unoccupied berths in Council's Chinaman's Creek Marina. Why haven't they been let to applicants on the Chinaman's Creek berth waiting list? And how many people are on this waiting list? There we go. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I think we might try and get a response from the General Manager of Assets Environment, Mr Stuart McConnell. Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Morris, for the question. There's always movement within the marinas, and the available berths are regularly being offered to those on the wait list. This process, though, takes some time, as we need to step through formally offering the berth to a potential berth holder. They take some time to consider and come back to us, and so on. And in some cases, they're not able to take up the offer, and we need to move to the next person on the waiting list. So that process does take some time. The average occupancy for Chinaman's Creek, the average occupancy for Chinaman's Creek Marina over the last 2 years has been 91%. And as at June this year, so now, there are 9 vacant berths in the Chinaman's Creek Marina. Sometimes the vacant berth is also there because the permit holder, while they're paying full fees and etc., do not have the vessel in the berth, and sometimes that's for an extended period of time. Unless there's a satisfactory reason for that, Council will generally work with the berth holder then to relinquish that berth and then arrange to have that offered to others on the waiting list. But again, that process takes some time to encourage someone to relinquish the berth. Currently we have 68 people on the wait list for Chinaman's Creek.
I'm not allowed to make a comment, I presume?
You can make a quick comment.
2 years is a long time to try and fill these berths. Ridiculous.
Well, thank you. I think we've heard that it's not necessarily a simple matter of filling the berth, that there's a process in place and there is quite a long waiting list, and Council's doing its best to try and address that. But thank you for the question.
They should do better.
Agenda item number 1.7.3 is public submissions.
Other than the submission that we received as part of the recent petition, there are no further public submissions this evening.
Thank you, CEO. 1.8 is items to be tabled, which I understand there are none. Agenda item number 2. Thank you, Mr Borgelt. Agenda item 1.8, items to be tabled, no. Agenda item number 2, notices of motion. I believe there are none.
There are none.
On agenda item number 3, deferred business. I don't believe there is any. Agenda item number 4, council and delegates reports. Councillors, as previously resolved, I just ask you to submit your delegate reports for tabling in this meeting's minutes. Which moves us to agenda item 5.1.1, which is adoption of the council budget for 2024-25. And this sits within the Directorate of Business Excellence. And Ms Johnson, if you'd like to introduce this item, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
And thank you, Newlands Arms residents. Have a safe travel home.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, before you is the report titled Adoption of the Council Budget for 2024-25, which is seeking your consideration to adopt the draft budget for the next financial year and Attachment 1, including the declaration of rates and charges. The key points for consideration. So, as you know, Council must prepare and adopt a budget each financial year so we can get on with delivering over 100 services to our communities. The draft budget balances providing services and facilities that meet community expectations, building new infrastructure projects and maintaining existing assets while keeping rates as low as possible. The budget also resources the final year of the current council plan, which is a later agenda item for tonight. In addition to this year, the budget, there is an 11-page snapshot document which aims to help community understand the main themes of the budget. Council released the draft budget for community feedback on the 30th of April. Extensive advertising and promotion of the draft budget was done, as well as copies provided to all service centres and libraries. It was also available on Your Say, with several related documents and videos which explained some of the work of Council. Based on these activities, there were over 200 downloads of the 2024-25 budget. Councillors have considered all feedback from the community, and council officers will follow up with individuals on the feedback submitted. In developing the budget, Council recognises cost of living pressures that are impacting many people across our communities. We've developed a disciplined budget that keeps rates forecast below inflation rates at 2.75%. In doing so, that's balancing community aspirations for more of some services, delivering on legislative obligations and keeping the financial impact on community as low as possible. The budget has a strong focus on managing within our means. Coupled with this, Council has a range of supports available to help people having trouble paying rates. This includes payment arrangements to assist people to pay rates in smaller amounts across a longer period, and Council encourages ratepayers to contact us for confidential support if needed. The headlines for this budget are a disciplined budget that keeps rates within a 2.75% increase, which is the Victorian Government rate cap, non-statutory user fees and charges that align to the estimated inflation of 3.5%, no increases in green waste fees or the waste levy, operational efficiencies of $1.3 million in 24-25 and $3 million in the forward estimates, a capital works program of just over $91 million, which includes $36 million in capital grants, major projects totalling around $11 million, a forecast operating surplus of close to $29 million, and an underlying deficit of $5.6 million. The underlying deficit is because when income from grants and contributions of capital works is taken out, that equates to what the underlying deficit of $5.6 million is for the year. The reason for it this particular year is that we've got $3.2 million in bushfire-funded programs which received funding in the previous year but will be delivered in this year, as well as cyclical costs, for example, the council elections. The budget in keeping rate forecasts less than forecast CPI includes a range of efficiencies, including the $1.3 million, which I highlighted earlier. We know we are part of the community and we understand challenges of our economic climate and the cost of living pressures. Council is continually looking for ways to improve efficiency of our service delivery and innovate to remain financially sustainable. This can be done in many ways, and it was part of the answers that I provided to the question earlier, including around collaborative procurement and sharing of services with neighbouring councils, which has had a significant impact on reducing costs. Council also actively looks for opportunities to do things differently. Putting out to lease one of our caravan parks recently allows community to benefit from commercial opportunity and reduces the cost of operations by an estimated $400,000. You will also see this budget reduces consultancy costs of $650,000. This is in an environment when cost escalations are much higher. For example, contract costs, insurances and utilities are averaging increases of between 4 and 5%. Revenue from rates, as we know, is necessary to keep core services running. As you can see in this budget, the approach to rate setting has been made with a balance of providing services and facilities that meet community expectations, building new infrastructure projects and maintaining existing assets while keeping rates as low as possible. For 24-25, the budget proposes that generally all property owners on average receive a similar percentage rate increase. The proposed average increases for the three classes of properties are 2.74% for residential properties, 2.16% for commercial industrial properties and 3.44% for farming properties. And I'll just reiterate that that is an average. The budget also proposes that differential rates for the farm and commercial industrial classes of properties be set at 75% for farms, which is a 5% reduction on the previous year, and 135% for commercial industrial properties, which is also a 5% decrease on the previous year. The financial performance indicators indicate the Council has developed a budget that provides financial sustainability over the 4 years of the budget and a commitment to work with community to continue to deliver what is important across our communities. The officer recommendation starts on page 13 of the agenda, Mayor, and our Finance Manager Liz Collins is also here for questions of a technical nature. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms Johnson. Councillors, are there any questions? Councillor Greeson, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Ms Johnson. I'm just looking at this budget. I think it's an excellent budget, I have to say up front. But my question is, we know that pensioners and gold card holders have access to a sum of, what, $250 odd from state government and $65 from council. There are many other people who are not pensioners and not holders of gold cards who are facing hardship for many, many reasons, increasing costs of everything. Can you tell us about the supports and services that we have for those who are experiencing hardship?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Greeson. It is a really, really good question, and it's a very pertinent question at the moment. So I suppose the first basin where we're finding that customers are contacting us regularly is to set up what we call a payment plan, and that means you can pay smaller amounts over a longer period of time, and that is up to 3 years in our case. So what we're encouraging people to do is call us and talk to us, and we've got a really simple process that lets people go onto a payment plan over those longer periods of time, which might help soften the impact of if they are experiencing financial hardship or short-term financial hardship. The other part that is of benefit to that is that they don't incur any interest charges if they reach out to us and come onto a payment plan. What we also have is a financial hardship policy, and that's a slightly different thing. So it's got a whole lot of mechanisms in it which talk to when people are experiencing hardship for things like loss of employment or reduction in income, domestic or family violence, economic or financial abuse, bereavement, prolonged illness, including hospitalisation, family tragedy or impacts of natural disasters. So anyone that's experiencing any of those categories and any other category that will be considered financial hardship can contact us, and that also gives us another range of supports, including deferrals and waivers that we can assess based on their individual circumstances. The key message is contact us so we can talk to you and offer confidential support.
Thank you, Ms Johnson. Thank you, Councillor Greeson, for the question. Councillor Allen, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. In relation to the hardship provisions, where are the stress points? Is it in the commercial sector, the residential sector or the farm sector? Where are we getting people that are in trouble?
Thanks, Councillor Allen. I know that Liz has been running statistics quite regularly on this particular one, so I might get her to answer that particular one for me.
Nearly without exception, they're residential ratepayers. Councillor Allen, thank you for the question.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Councillor Allen. Councillor Stowe, you have a question?
Yes, Liz, could I probably give us a quick summary of our debt levels and how they compare with other councils? Are they low, high? And also the interest rates we're paying, are they competitive?
Through you, Mayor, thank you, Councillor Stowe, for that question. In terms of our debt levels, including the community infrastructure low interest loans that were taken up for 2 key projects in the last couple of years, adding those into our level of debt, we still sit at a relatively low debt level. Compared to other councils, look, I couldn't say without looking at their statistics, but they will vary depending on how they're using loan funding particularly for their capital projects. So our level of debt is still low, and if you look at the financial indicators, it's shown that it's well below our target level, and with only the Lenga loan proposed over the next 3 years, but we'll be drawing down on the other loans through that period. So low, relatively low debt level.
Thank you, Councillor Stowe. Councillors, are there any further questions? Councillor White, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to drill a little bit further into the hardship payments. Does Council have the ability to actually waive rates, fees for people who are absolutely destitute and perhaps in risk of even losing their property? Is there a provision there to assist those people and just waive rates? Do we have the capacity?
Thanks, Councillor Allen, and through you, Mayor. Councillor White. I'm so sorry, Councillor White. I don't know why I even did that. I do apologise sincerely for getting that wrong. Apologies again. Councillor White, through you, Mayor. Yes, the answer is yes. We absolutely can waive and we can defer. What I suppose we try to do more, though, is work with individuals who are in a hardship situation to work out the best plan for them to be able to... It's a balance between obviously getting the money that we need to be able to fund the essential and critical services that we provide across community and supporting community members when they're in dire need. But the short answer to your question is, in the policy, currently as it stands, yes, we can waive.
Thank you, Councillor White. Councillors, are there any further questions of officers? Councillor Van Diggle, please go ahead.
Thank you. Just for the public forum, if the hardship mainly come from residential, what is our reasoning for reducing or having a discount of 5% for commercial and farm rates this year?
Perhaps I can take that question. The rates, as you know, councillors are actually set by the councillors, not the staff. So we reflect the rates that we've discussed in the budget papers, but the reasoning comes from the councillor group itself rather than the officers. The officers therefore reflect the guidance. It's not a decision until it comes to council for a decision at this meeting. With the budget papers reflects the guidance and discussion that the councillors have had with officers while preparing the documentation.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Van Diggle. Councillors, are there further questions of officers? No. We do have a motion before us, and yes, Councillor Greason, you may move the motion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Uri, thank you. Councillor Greason, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I support this budget because I think it's a safe and healthy one for East Gippsland, all the services and asset management and project completion and new projects that we're going to be doing in the next 12 months, all within a rate cap of 2.75%, which is below CPI, and which will be delivered in an environment of significantly increasing costs. So congratulations, I think it's an excellent budget altogether. But I do wish, however, to make comment on the differential rating system that is proposed, as I don't believe it's fair or equitable, particularly in this time when many people are facing serious hardship. The rating proposed has attempted to make the percentage rate rises experienced by 3 sectors, commercial, residential and farming, all about the same. This looks good, but what it actually does is not, in my opinion, fair or equitable, because it takes money from the pockets of residential homeowners to reduce the rates for farmers and commercial sectors. I know that people are facing hard times in all three sectors, but the people who own their homes and are living off a pension or Centrelink or working with a low income or struggling to pay a mortgage, single mums and pensioners and others who are struggling to get food on the table, these people cannot claim their rates back on tax, and these people may be at risk of losing their homes. It worries me greatly that we're requiring these people to subsidise the other sectors. It's not a simple thing to fix, but I believe that we as a council should be looking for ways to support everyone who is struggling with paying their bills and not increase the pressure on the one sector that cannot reduce the impact of their rates. And this is the only sector seeking help because of hardship. So I definitely support the budget. I think it's an excellent budget, but I'll be working hard with councillors and council to review the rating structures in the future and hopefully to make it more equitable and fair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greason. Councillor Uri, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Just briefly, I'd firstly like to thank the people who read the draft budget and gave feedback to councillors. I think we're all very keen to receive feedback, and that's no mean task to read through the budget papers. Of course, there's no guarantee that the papers were read by that many people. I think there were 200 downloads, which was quite considerable, but how many people actually read them and understand them enough to give feedback is always a question, but that's the system we rely on. So I think our report says that we had 7 submissions back to the budget, so thank you particularly to those people. I'd also like to thank the staff who have led us through the process of developing this budget, which I believe is a sound budget and worthy of our support this evening. I think the budget process from memory starts before Christmas each year with our first workshops, and there are many workshops between then and now getting to this point. So we've had lots of opportunity to consider the details of the budget and to comment on the details as well. I'd also like to particularly appreciate the clear description of the process and of the that we went through and of the budget itself. And I'd particularly like to recommend that people read pages 3 to 12 of the budget document. I think that's very instructive and in very clear language. Yes, I think it's also been mentioned that at the time of development of this budget, we, like all other local government areas, are subject to inquiries from state and federal governments about the sustainability of local government. So it is a question for local government about how we continue to provide the vital services to our communities in the context of increasing costs. One of the most accurate descriptions, I think, of the budget process itself that I've read, and it's under the taxation principles. It's an appropriate balancing of competing considerations, an appropriate balancing of competing considerations. That's what we have to do through the process of the budget. There are many things to consider, and I think this budget represents as fair a result as possible, and I commend it to my fellow councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Uri. Councillors, is the motion opposed? Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor White, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to support the budget this year. The last couple of years I haven't, because I've been extremely worried about what I'd call overreach, particularly capital works, and each year we've seen carryovers of works not completed. And what we saw there was that the funding that was available to those projects became not enough as prices rose, and there was so much council cash then required to meet the commitment of providing that capital works. So we're seeing a wind down in that. or we'll call it catch-up, and we will probably, within another year, get back to what was normal, which is around about the 35 million in capital works, not 110. It's pleasing to see that, or perhaps call it under new management, that the staff have really endeavoured this time to absolutely look for savings, something that's probably been ignored a bit the last few years. So that's good to see, and I think we will see more of that, particularly as we wind back our capital works. There'll be less requirement for consultants and designs and etc. that we pay for, so that will see more savings. And I am pleased that the way the rating ratios have worked out, contrary to what Councillor Greason said. There are small businesses that are actually, the owners are taking home less to spend than their workers are being paid. Now, don't begrudge the workers being paid, but just please remember that there are some very small businesses all over the Shire that are really, really struggling too. So it is good to see that that's been able to be kept under that rate cap. Farmers have got a slightly higher amount, and I guess they're getting used to that. So I will support the budget on the fact that we are finally showing some good, sound. What have you done, Jane? Bit of feedback. No, just to say that I can see, looking forward and probably for next year's budget, that we are going to see more savings, and that's good, because the more we save, the less we have to put pressure on the ratepayers of the area. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor White. Councillor Reeves, please go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, councillors. Thanks for the contributions that have been made around the table. I think they're really important discussions to have. But I'm very happy to support this budget this year. I think that the focus on 100 or more services that the Shire provides, and a sense that community requires more for less faster, is, I think, something that resounds for me. The fact that all classifications and the differential rates have increased below CPI, I think, is an extraordinary situation this year, and I'm pleased to be able to report that to the community, and I'm very grateful to the officers who have worked so hard to present a range of options for councillors to consider, and for us to land on this particular recommendation tonight, which I hope is resolved this evening. I think it is a fair budget. I think the comments that have been made around capital works and differentials are really important and need to be made. And again, I think that the councils in future need to have the courage to be able to move those differentials again in different directions should they feel it's appropriate.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Councillor Buckley, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, the budget exemplifies a strategic and responsive approach to addressing the diverse needs and challenges of our expansive community. At its core, this budget aims to ensure the delivery of essential services while fostering sustainable economic growth and resilience across the region. We are councillors in challenging times. One of the primary goals, I feel, of this budget is to maintain financial discipline, and that's why I'm supporting it, while accommodating the needs of our residents. By limiting rate increases to the 2.75%, the Council demonstrates its commitment to easing financial pressures on families whilst ensuring sufficient revenue to support vital community initiatives outlined in the Council plan. The approach is underpinned by a robust financial hardship policy, offering flexible payment plans to support ratepayers facing economic difficulties, and thus promoting inclusivity and support within the community. So I would ask ratepayers to please reach out to us and take advantage of this payment arrangement service. That's really important. Furthermore, the budget strategically allocates, as you've heard, $91 million towards a comprehensive capital works program, which will focus on making fit-for-purpose current assets and will be supplemented by an anticipated government funding of $36 million. This significant investment underscores the Council's dedication to enhancing infrastructure and community facilities, which are crucial for improving local quality of life and fostering economic development. By addressing critical infrastructure needs such as roads and community facilities, the Council aims to ensure connectivity and accessibility across Gippsland. Despite the geographical challenges posed by its vast landscape, the Roads to Recovery funding should ensure we have noticeable improvement to our roads, which is crucial for safety and economic prosperity. And that's what I hear most in my community is we need better roads, we need safer roads. And I think that that should be a real focus of our council into the future. The budget also emphasises transparency and accountability, clearly outlining a surplus in operating funds while acknowledging temporary deficits due to non-recurring capital income. This transparency is crucial for building trust and ensuring effective financial management, aligning with the Council's commitment to responsive governance and long-term sustainability. Now, when I stood for Council, it was on the provision that transparency and accountability was one of my goals to achieve. Under our new CEO and her team, I believe we've made great strides in this direction. Therefore, for the first time in this term, as a councillor, I will vote in support of this budget. And I apologise for my puppy in the background. He's telling me someone's about. So in conclusion, the budget represents a balanced and proactive approach to meeting the evolving needs of its community by leveraging strategic differential strategies and advocating for equitable funding mechanisms. The Council aims to strengthen local resilience and ensure continued delivery of essential services. I believe this budget is forward-looking and not only supports current community needs, but also lays a sustainable foundation for future growth, underscoring the Council's dedication to building a connected and prosperous future. So I hope my thoughts will help the councillors support this budget.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. And I will just remind councillors that we have 3 minutes to speak to these matters. Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? In which case, we will put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? And that, I believe, is carried unanimously by this council for the first time. Thank you, councillors. We will now move on to agenda item 5.1.2, which is the adoption of the 10-year financial plan, 2024-25 to 33-34, and the 4-year revenue and rating plan, 23-24 to 27-28. And Ms Johnson, I believe this is in your Directorate of Business Excellence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, before you is a report titled Adoption of the 10-Year Financial Plan, 24-25 to 2033 to 34, and the 4-year Revenue and Rating Plan, which is 2024 to 25 to 2027 to 28. The report, once I get all those numbers out, is seeking your consideration to adopt the draft 10-year financial plan at Attachment 1 and the draft 4-year Revenue and Rating Plan, which is at Attachment 2. I'll now run through the key points to consider. To assist guide Council's financial planning and to ensure Council is financially sustainable, Council must adopt a financial plan for the period of at least 10 financial years. The plan describes the financial resources required to give effect to the Council plan. We're in the final year of the Council plan this time round, but we'll be going into a new Council plan in the near future as well. And it's a key planning document that supports Council's financial sustainability. Council must also adopt a revenue and rating plan, which provides the revenue-raising framework Council uses to cover the cost of providing services to the community. We've talked about some of those critical services tonight. Council has updated the 10-year financial plan and the 4-year revenue and rating plan in conjunction with the 24-25 budget, which you just considered. I'll bring your attention to the assumptions included in the financial plan, which are aligned to support Council's financial sustainability, and this is a key theme. Principles and measures of success are detailed in the plan, and these demonstrate that we have an underlying average surplus when we look across the 10 years. The working capital is greater than 150% in all years. Unrestricted cash is above the target of 80% in all years. Loans and borrowings, which I've already teased out a question on, are and remain at low levels. Asset renewal is above 100% for the first 5 years and then comes slightly below for the remaining 5 years. This is because grant income can't be forecast to increase past that 5-year part. We fully expect, though, that grant income, once it is in the forward estimates come through from the Commonwealth and state governments, will be able to make this particular ratio come to above 100% in the sustainability sense. Further details of these financial performance indicators are included on page 29 of the 10-year financial plan. Turning to the 4-year revenue and rating plan that includes the rating and other revenue information that supports the 10-year plan and the budget. As we've talked about, Council delivers over 100 services to our local community, and we work around the clock to deliver these essential services, from waste and recycling collections to roadworks and street cleaning, public health and safety, and keeping our parks and gardens in great shape for everyone to enjoy. In providing these services, we must collect revenue to cover the costs and rates of the most significant revenue source for Council. The Revenue and Rating Plan explains how Council calculates the revenue needed to keep the services running and how the funding burden will be apportioned between ratepayers and other users of Council facilities and services. It sets out the options available to ensure the fair and equitable distribution of rates across property owners, as well as the principles that are used in the decision-making for other revenue sources such as fees and charges. It does not set revenue targets for Council. It outlines the strategic framework and the decisions that inform how Council will go about calculating and collecting its revenue. The approach to the rating has been made considering how Council will generate the income to deliver services to our communities over the next 4-year period. The Revenue and Rating Plan is reviewed and updated annually. Thank you, councillors. The officer recommendation is on page 153 of the agenda for your consideration, and as I've stated before, Liz Collins is also here as well to answer any questions that may be of a technical nature. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Johnson. Councillors, are there any questions of a technical nature or otherwise? Councillor Greeson, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got 2 questions. Can you explain the statement that the capital funding measure falls slightly below the 30% target from 2031 to 32, etc., and also the implications of new grants or your assumption that there will be new grants coming in over that period?
Thanks, Councillor Greeson. It's a really good question. I'm actually going to throw to Liz to answer that one for me.
Through you, Mayor, thank you, Councillor Greeson, for that question. The target of the 30% will vary, year on year, and in those out years, when we do that calculation, depending on known funding, it will vary. But we have mentioned that regardless of that, it's still at an acceptable level, so not of a concern when measuring that in terms of the funding. Your second question was...
I haven't asked it, but it was linked to an assumption that we will be getting grants in the future and that will change the percentage.
Yes, thank you. Yes, and particularly with the capital program, the only grants that we forecast in those out years are a base amount for the Roads to Recovery funding. And as we know, we've got $36 million worth of grants in this next year, whereas in those out years it goes back to $3 million of Roads to Recovery funding. So as Ms Johnson had just said, we expect that we will have other grants, state and federal grants, towards the capital program. As we get closer to that time, we'll know further.
Yep, thank you, Liz. My second question relates to the new borrowings for Lenga, totalling $4.5 million over 3 years, and the impact that will have, and a little bit of reference to the interests that will accrue. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Greeson. I'll just kick that one off. So as we've already talked about, we've got very low levels of borrowings relatively, and we do source the most effective and lowest dollar interest rates that apply to those borrowings. I'll actually throw to Liz, though, to give you an answer on the dollar amounts that come across in the forward estimates.
Thank you.
Through you, Mayor. Thank you again, Councillor Greeson, for that question. In terms of the borrowings proposed for the drainage project, the Lenga Drainage Project, For the 25-26 year, the interest component is only $25,000. As you know, it's been taken up in 3 stages, $500,000 in the next year, which we expect to take up late in the year, $2.5 million the year after, and $1.5 in the 3rd year. In the 26-27 year, total interest is $148,000. That's when we've got 2 of them, 2 components. And in the 3rd year, $211,000 of interest. Across we're expecting those to be 10-year loans, and across the 10 years for that $4.5 million of loan borrowings, the total interest that we've estimated is $1.3 million in terms of interest to be repaid on that $4.5 million. The interest rate that we've used, we've been very conservative. We've used at this stage a 5% interest rate. But if we are able to borrow through the Treasury Corporation of Victoria, we will get a lower rate. But once again, it would depend on any application we make through them and how successful we are in procuring loan funds through Treasury.
Okay.
But that's where we'd aim, and then we would adjust, obviously, forecast it next year in the budget if that's the case.
Okay, thank you, Liz. It's very interesting.
Thank you for the questions. Councillor White, you have a question. Please go ahead.
Thank you. It relates to the same subject. So we're putting up the funding, but eventually that will be repaid to council either through developers levy or perhaps levy on the block owners. Is that how will we get it back, or are we just stumping up this money for the Northern Growth area?
Thanks, Councillor White. The intent behind the provision of infrastructure into the Lengor area is that the developers fund the cost of that infrastructure. So that's the underlying principle. There's some elements of the infrastructure which is also addressing matters that council needs to address with drainage and the like in the area anyway. So there'll be a combination. But the underlying principle is that the developers in the Lengor area need to fund the costs of drainage and other infrastructure associated with their development.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Mr McConnell. Councillors, are there any further questions of officers? Councillor Uri, please go ahead.
Thank you, Ms Johnson. An interesting part of the budget, particularly the 10-year financial plan, looking out is what percentage of council's income will come from rates and what will come from, well, rates and charges and what will come from grants. Would you please comment on the trend in the outer years of that percentage? I believe we're going to expect to pay a greater percentage of rates in the outer years.
Thank you, Councillor Uri. That is a very good question, and it will go back to how the future grants are received, which we talked about a little bit earlier. So I might throw back to Liz just to walk us through when we're receiving, what the forecasts look like for that, and why you're seeing the increase in revenue from rates as part of that.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Councillor Uri. You are correct. You will see the trend upwards in terms of our reliance on rate revenue as a percentage of our total adjusted income, and that's and that will happen over time. Some elements of our income are removed to calculate that underlying revenue. But once again, the expectation is that we will continue to increase slightly in our reliance on our percentage of income coming from rates. And that's because our ability to generate that other revenue from other sources is quite limited.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Uri. Councillor Reeves, you have a question. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. And through you, my question relates to the asset renewal program in our aim of having greater than 100%, but in the 10-year forecast, it does trickle away right out to 2032 down to 80%. I just wonder if the officers might make a comment about that. Is it too difficult to predict that far out, or are we letting things slip?
Thanks, Councillor Reeves. Look, it is a really good question, and it comes from a place of not being able to. So we only know the roads to recovery component of it up to the next 5 years, which is where you're seeing that asset renewal ratio is balanced. From that 5 years out, we just flatline it, to use simple terms. There's no increase built into it because we don't know if there'll be any increase built into it. History tells us, though, that that has increased and does increase as you get closer to the time of realising it. So we expect, and we're planning and fully expect, that that asset renewal ratio will come above 100% as we get closer to that time period. And therefore, whilst we are below that indicator, we still think that is a low risk.
Thanks for that response. That's reassuring. And Mayor, just a note to ourselves that we must make sure we advocate for those roads to recovery funding and other grant funding to ensure that those asset renewal programs are above 100% in future.
Indeed, Councillor Reeves. Thank you for the question. Councillors, are there any further questions of officers? We do have an officer recommendation in the report. Do I have a mover for that motion? Thank you, Councillor Allen. And a seconder, Councillor Reeves. Thank you. Councillor Allen, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, only to thank Sarah and Liz and Janelle for the work that's gone into it. And, you know, as we realise that over time it gets harder and harder to predict, but within that frame, I think it predicts or shows that our council's in a pretty good position. So well done.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Councillor Reeves, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks for those words, Councillor Allen. And councillors, I think from the questions and from the workshops we've conducted, I think we'd agree that that plan in front of us provides a really good, financially sound and sustainable view of council's financial position over the next 10 years. And the 4-year revenue and rating plan provides an important information in regard to the council's revenue plan over the next 4 years. And I absolutely encourage you all to support the adoption of this financial plan and rating plan in front of us now.
Thank you very much, Councillor Reeves. Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? No, in which case I will put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? And I believe that is carried unanimously, CEO. Thank you, councillors. We'll now move on with the agenda to item 5.1.3, which is the draft annual action plan 2024-25. And Ms Johnson, the Director of Business Excellence, I believe this sits with you.
It does.
Please introduce the item.
Thank you, Mayor. There's less numbers in this one, I promise. So, councillors, before you is a report titled the Annual Action Plan, which is seeking endorsement of the draft Annual Action Plan for 2024-25. The key points of the report for Council to consider are, and we'll just go back one step. Every 4 years, Council works with the community to develop a new council plan. The 21-25 Council Plan identifies strategic priorities to be delivered over the 4-year period. It's Council's key plan to set the direction of the organisation over the 4 years. Every year, the Annual Action Plan is developed and aligned to the budget process, and we've just talked about the budget in earlier items. The plan lists the actions, major initiatives and strategic indicators needed to implement the Council Plan. It does not contain the business as usual work the Council does every day, providing key services to our community. There are 8 major initiatives outlined in the Annual Action Plan, covering all strategic objectives of the Council Plan for 2021 to 2025. The themes of these are engagement and collaboration with Aboriginal organisations and communities, initiate and progressing planning scheme amendments, undertaking climate risk assessment to identify and respond to the likely impact of extreme weather and climate events, finalising the greenhouse gas emission reduction plan, progressing an organic waste facility at the Bairnsdale landfill, supporting the Pathways to Growth program, developing place plans in key areas to address community needs, and reviewing the community vision for 2040. Progress in achieving the actions and performing indicators for the Annual Action Plan is reported quarterly back to Council and also to community. In preparing the report, the Victorian Gender Equity Act has been considered and the implications of the report have been assessed and are compliant with the obligations and principles of the Gender Equality Act. Tonight I also have Portia Branton, who's the Manager of Organisational Strategy and Performance, who is present and is available to also help me respond to questions of a technical nature. The report is presented for your consideration. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms Johnson, and welcome, Portia. Councillors, are there any questions of officers around the annual action plan? There is a recommendation in the report. Do I have a mover for that recommendation if there are no questions? Thank you, Councillor Greason. And a second to Councillor Uri. Councillor Greason, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just very briefly. Look, the 8 major initiatives are all key strategic deliverables that will establish East Gippsland Shire Council's foundation for a strong future for all East Gippsland for many years. And I just wanted to say I'm so impressed with the work of the council officers during these turbulent years and the recovery that's going to continue for many more years. And I think to have this clear vision for the future based on the community's own 2021 vision statement, I just say congratulations and thank you for your work.
Thank you, Councillor Greason. Councillor Uri, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, it's quite exciting really to receive the final action plan for our term of council. And this action plan, of course, will cover, as has been explained already, those 8 major initiatives, but that's not the only work. There are a lot of actions in this plan, a lot of work. This represents a lot of work. So I think we'll keenly look out for the report against this plan before we leave this chamber, but it will also cover the work of the new council as well. Obviously, we've seen this before, and as Councillor Greason pointed out, all of this is based on the community vision right back, if you trace it sort of right back. So I'm very proud of where we've got to, and I look forward to seeing the next report against this plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Uri. Councillors, is the motion opposed? Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? No, in which case I will put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Agenda item 5.1.4 is the inquiry into local government funding and service delivery. And I believe, Ms Johnson, this is also with you.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, before you is a report titled Inquiry into Local Government Funding and Service Delivery, which is seeking Council's endorsement of the submission at Attachment 2 and authorisation for the CEO to update the draft submission with relevant data or information coming from local government peak bodies. May I also draw your attention to the fact that in the council papers there was a listing of Attachment 1, which set out the key terms of reference of the inquiry. That was missed in the attachments. However, it actually is just replicated in the background information in the council report at the start. The key points for the report for consideration. The Parliament of Victoria's Economic and Infrastructure Committee on Economy and Infrastructure has commenced a new inquiry into the local government funding and service delivery in Victoria. Excuse me for a second. As part of the inquiry, the committee will examine the effects of cost shifting from state and federal government to local councils, whether local council are adequately delivering on their core service delivery objectives, the overall revenue structure of local government, and whether the existing revenue structure is sustainable and appropriate, or if alternate models of funding would be more sustainable and appropriate. The committee has identified our council and all other councils across Victoria as a key stakeholder and invited submissions on the terms as just stated. Council welcomes this inquiry and continues to strive to deliver critical services and support thriving communities. You've heard tonight already in the draft budget and the 10-year and 4-year revenue rating plan, this is a key theme. Council works hard to deliver the 100 local services to our communities and is the delivery level for government that directly impacts households, as you've again heard and you all know deeply. However, and as the submission points out, as our response to the inquiry points out, Council is often required to deliver many of the federal and state government priorities with little or not enough funding to do so. A key statistic I want to highlight actually in our submission is that for every dollar of revenue we manage, we manage every $1 of revenue that we collect. We manage $10 of physical assets like parks and roads. For the Victorian government, this is $4, and for the Commonwealth, this is 40 cents. It's a pretty important key statistic to bring home exactly how much that we do. Financial sustainability, again, a key theme for tonight, is a critical issue for our council and has been highlighted in the development of the budget and the 10-year financial plan. Community trust relies on governments working together, and we welcome a mature conversation with state government so that critical services and infrastructure are in place where they are most needed. The draft submission to the inquiry is provided, as I've stated, at attachment 2, and the recommendations to the committee are summarised in the exec summary and detailed through the report. I'd like to highlight the recommendations and how they've been split into the following themes. Funding increases, and this is just absolutely critical. It goes to all of those things we were talking about for the asset renewal ratio and also the revenue ratios for the out years, and talks to the fact about if we want to put less pressure on our ratepayers here in our region, there has to be funding from other places. The headline is the increase to the financial assistance grants up to 1%. Now, I know that that's a federal lever, but this is about advocacy to the federal government to make that fair. Now, can I just bring that home that at the moment that's sitting at 0.57% and it hasn't had a per capita increase since 1995. So if funding is increased to the fair share local government needs to deliver critical services to community and is indexed annually, this provides a much better certainty to council and our community to provide the services that they need. The second component of our response to the inquiry is for the Victorian Government to consult and consider the cost burden on any new legislation, recognising that there are already over 120 pieces of Victorian legislation that local government must abide by. So it's about consulting with us early, and it's about looking at how much it costs for us to implement those particular any new pieces of legislation that state government want to bring to the table. The final part is about standardising reporting for both assets and financial indicators that gives a base of comparison across local government and assesses the risk to longer-term financial sustainability. This is about showing as a whole local government industry how we can be consistently measured for risk for financial sustainability. At the moment, different state agencies and different federal agencies are looking at different indicators across our books and making different decisions based on those. If we have a standardised set, what that means is that we can make the right decisions to hopefully go back to increasing the funding levels to a level that we need to deliver those services. Councillors, the final point that I'll bring to the table on this is that there is a public inquiry on this particular submission, and we've got key industry groups that will be presenting to that tomorrow. Any feedback that comes from that, we will review and see if we need to add into our particular submission, but that's not happening until tomorrow, and we're obviously meeting tonight. So before you, there is a recommendation on page 246 of the agenda for your consideration. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms Johnson, and I'll just point out too that as a part of that recommendation, it does actually authorise the Chief Executive Officer to augment the existing draft with relevant data and information coming from those local government peak bodies, which we will hear about more tomorrow. Councillors, are there any questions in relation to the report? Councillor Uri, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for this piece of work, which is really considerable. My question relates to whether, to what degree have we gone out by ourselves to make this submission? Are we alone in this, or have we had support from MAV or Regional Councils Victoria to do this?
Very good question, Councillor Uri. So what we have done across council is review the federal government submission. So remember that we have submitted a response to the federal inquiry, I think about a month ago. So we've reviewed all of the industry submissions to that and made sure that they're consistent, again, with this particular one. FinPro actually did do some work, earlier work on responding to this particular inquiry. So we've drawn a lot of the themes in that from here too to make sure that we're consistent. So in answer to your question, we're not expecting anything dramatically different to come up as part of the hearings for tomorrow, and we do believe that we are consistent, and we're seeing consistent themes and messages from across the board with what we're putting forward here to state government as well.
Thank you. again, considering whether we are, as part of a rural area, whether we're any different from urban councils in this, but we have had discussions about the rate cap in this, and I don't believe that we've asked to keep the rate cap. We think that's probably quite a good idea, but recognise that there is an ability for councils to choose whether they increase rates by the rate cap or something less than that. Can you just comment on that, please?
Thank you, Councillor Yuri, and through you, Mayor. Also another really good question. So what's included in the submission here is an acknowledgement that the rate cap's important, the rate cap should continue. There's also a suggestion that the Essential Services Commission, who advises government on the rate cap, should be able to consider other indices that mean that when they're setting the rate cap, they can look at what the real cost pressures to council are. So that is included in the report. I suppose the secondary part of that, the main headline that I really wanted to emphasise on this, is that the lever to increase the fair share of revenue for us to be able to deliver those services is the financial assistance grant and increasing that. So there's two separate parts. There's a vertical fiscal imbalance, which is about the percentage amount we get from financial assistance grants, currently sitting at 0.57%. We want that to increase to 1%. There's then a horizontal fiscal imbalance, and that's about the mix of how much of that, at the moment, 0.57% gets distributed. Now, for us here in East Gippsland, that takes into account our unique communities, and it is levelled in that way. So it will take into account things like the disadvantage indices. We're comfortable and confident that from the 0.57%, we're getting our fair share of that from a statewide basis, and we don't suggest that we should advocate on that front. What we need, though, is a bigger bucket, which will mean that we'll get more will flow.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Yuri. Councillors, are there any further questions of officers? We do have a recommendation in the report. Do I have a mover for that motion? Thank you, Councillor Buckley. And a seconder? Councillor Reeves. Councillor Buckley, would you like to speak to the motion?
Look, certainly I had some notes, but I realise I'm under time constraints, so I won't read them because it's gone over very well. It'll be going over ground that's already been really well covered. But I just want to say the work that has been done by Sarah and her team has given me confidence that we're in really good hands and that we're advocating in the right space and asking the right questions and putting forward the right recommendations. So I've got every confidence that this, I hope that it moves forward the process that we're going to need to address to ensure that we are financially sustainable into the future, because it'll affect every East Gippslander. The more remote you get, the harder that it is. And I can say that for all rural councils in Victoria, and Rural Councils Victoria put a submission in as well. I don't think all councils have. So I just want to commend the effort and ask councillors to support this important piece of work.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Councillor Reeves, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I do. Sorry, I'm just navigating through multiple screens there. Look, I'm really delighted that we've been able to provide this report, and thank the council officers for creating such a succinct but also hard-hitting report. It's really important, and I really commend it to that standing committee, and I hope that they take notice of it and in future can act on it as well. I believe that their intentions are genuine, so not only are they seeking advice and seeking feedback, let's hope they receive it and act on it in future.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Councillors, is the motion opposed? Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? In which case I will put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We'll now move directorates to 5.2.1, and we have a contract which is Con 2022-1432, contract extension, a schedule for rates, contract for Bituminous sealing in East Gippsland, and this sits within the Assets and Environment Directorate, which we have Stuart McConnell here to speak to the matter. Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, the report before you is seeking your approval to exercise the options within the existing contract Con 2022-1432, which is a schedule of rates contract for bituminous sealing works throughout East Gippsland. And the recommendation is to extend that contract, the first extension term being for an additional 12-month period through to mid-2025. As said, the work is, the contract is for a schedule of rates for a contract to carry out our annual sealing program. And the initial term of that contract finishes on the 30th of June this year, so very soon. The contract provides for two 12-month extension options. The advantage of that is we know what the rates are that we're looking at as we step forward to exercise those options as opposed to going back out to tender. The performance of the contract has been satisfactory and timely, and so the officer's recommendation is that indeed we do take up the extension option. We seek your approval for the initial 12 months and also to authorise the CEO to exercise this second 12-month extension in the event that the performance continues to be satisfactory and timely. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Mr McConnell. Councillors, are there any questions of officers? No, I see none. A comprehensive report. There is a recommendation in the report. Do I have a mover for the motion? Councillor Allen, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Van Diggle, thank you very much. Councillor Allen, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just to say that I think that it's a good idea to exercise this option to extend for the reasons that Stuart has given, that we know what the costs are going to be. And, you know, when you look around at our roads, I think compared with Vic roads and Commonwealth roads, our roads are pretty damn good. So I think that needs to be acknowledged too, that in this instance, you know, that these contractors' cranes do a very good job of their reseals and the condition we have our roads in.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Councillor Van Diggle, would you like to speak to the motion? Very good. Is the motion opposed? Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? No, in which case I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We'll now move on to item 5.2.2, which is another contract item. Contract 2024-1652 for the Moroney Street Bairnsdale Upgrade Stage 3B, and Mr McConnell, this also sits with you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So, councillors, before you use a report recommending the awarding of this contract or the acceptance of the tender, I just draw your attention firstly, though, to the information in the report that talks about where this project comes from. So Moroney Street, significant street, had poor drainage, had wide gravel shoulders. It certainly was not up to the standards that we would expect of an urban street, and also the intersections there gave rise to the risk of higher speed collisions. So all of these things went into a project which then said, over a period of time, we're going to seek to really upgrade Moroney Street, and progressively there's been a series of contracts let to bring that upgrade to a reality. And this is the last of those segments to be upgraded, stage 3B as it's referred to, from Brent Street to Riley Street. So as outlined in the report, the works is upgrading drainage, introducing the curb and channel, provision of footpaths, parking lanes, reinstatement of the seal, and so on. So there's a range of things in that report which I think outline what this work is about. And I just note also and just recognise, mention was made earlier of the Roads to Recovery funding. This is a project which is supported in part with the Roads to Recovery funding, and so we just recognise that. So, councillors, there is an officer's recommendation. Obviously, the detail of that sits in the confidential tender evaluation panel report attached. If you wish to talk about that, as with any other contract, we need to move into in camera. However, if there's any questions about, in general, the contract, etc., happy to answer those. And I should just note we have our Manager Infrastructure Projects, Renee Wicks, with us to assist with any questions.
Excellent, and thank you, Stuart, and welcome, Renee. Councillors, are there any questions of officers on the final stage of the upgrade of Moroney Street, known as 3B? No questions? It's a comprehensive report. We do have a motion in the officer recommendation. Councillor Greeson and Councillor Stowe. Councillor Greeson, would you like to speak to the motion? Oh, in fact, what I might actually do is ask you to fill the blanks.
So point 2, that the tender submitted by Whelan's Group Investments Proprietary Limited for Con 2024-1651 Moroney Street, Bairnsdale Upgrade Stage 3B for the revised tendered lump sum price of $1,071,307.09 ex-GST as provided at Appendix 1 be accepted.
Very good. And does that accord with what you have just said, Councillor Greeson?
Concord, Whelan's, yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Stowe, you'd agree with that as well? Very good. Councillor Greeson, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you. Just it's great that this has got to this stage. It's a long street and all the residents there have been really waiting for this. It's been very good. Thank you.
Councillor Stowe? Turn your microphone on, please.
I drive on Moroney Street every day, and it's a substandard road, just as Stuart pointed out, with gravel potholes. It's been awful for 20 or 30 years, and it's taken a long time to get to this. It's a credit to the staff and the council that we're in the final stage of this now. The first 3 stages look fantastic, and this will finish off a great job, great project.
Thank you, Councillor Stowe. Councillors, is the motion opposed? Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor White, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Just pretty much just to back up what Trevor said, because it's been a substandard street for a long, long time, and this actually goes back to the beginnings of the previous council where this project was undertaken in stages. But just to add to it, that the residents there used to view their position on the list of jobs to be done. And when I first got on council, they were sitting at somewhere about 18 and thinking, well, we're nearly there. And then the next time that list came out, they were at 39 and they couldn't believe it. But somehow or other, projects had got ahead of them until finally they'd sort of had enough and came really to the council group to sort of say, please, can somebody fix our street? And it's wonderful, and I'm certain that the residents along there and other people that use that street will benefit greatly from the quality of the work and the way it looks now. I think it's amazing, so I certainly concur.
Thank you, Councillor White. Councillor Buckley, please go ahead.
Moroney Street. I think there's a lot of stories about Moroney Street, having lived there myself, but it was also a plank in my platform to get Moroney Street done and finished. So I'm really proud to be with this councillor group that we're achieving that, and I hope that they'll all support this motion.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Councillors, would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? No, in which case I will put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? And that is unanimously carried. Thank you, councillors. The next agenda item, and can we call Ms Johnson back in yet, or is she not yet? She's got one more. She's coming. Okay, fantastic. We'll now move on to agenda item 5.2.3, which is another contract matter. Contract 2024-1649R. This is for the construction of the Buchan Recreation Reserve netball and tennis court reconstruction. And Mr McConnell, I believe this sits with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors. Yes, before you is a report which will recommend the acceptance of a tender in relation to the the first bit of the redevelopment of the Buchan Recreation Reserve. So this is a really important project. It's been identified as a priority by the community as part of their recovery work. It's been a long-standing issue in terms of, I suppose, the level of investment in this reserve. And whilst this isn't one of council's assets, it's one that council has taken on in the context of bushfire recovery to assist the community in managing its redevelopment. It's an important place for the community to meet, but currently there's a range of facilities there that don't meet contemporary standards for community sporting facilities, and the overall reserve is also important in turn a whole range of other things, including during times of emergency. So there's several components, and over the next couple of months you'll see other components come through in relation to the Buchan Recreation Reserve, but the first component for you is the redevelopment of the netball courts, tennis courts, and so that work has been out to tender. I do note that it's taken us a little while to get there because we went out to tender and the pricing that was received was not what was needed, and so we needed to re-tender that work, and so that's before you now. So councillors, I'm happy to answer any questions. Again, Renee Wicks is with me to assist in answering any questions you might have in relation to this project, which is an important project for the Buchan community, and I'm excited to be able to bring this stage to you.
Thank you, Mr McConnell. Councillors, any questions? Yes, Councillor Uri, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Indeed, an important project. And very big project, and I gather it's not the last of the projects either. Would you mind commenting, please? I note that officers have been working with the Buchan Glanterbie Districts Renewal Association and the Buchan Rec Reserve Committee of Management. Could you please outline the level of consultation that there has been and the level of satisfaction there is in the community or otherwise with this project?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Uri, and through you, Mayor. I'll ask Renee Wicks to respond in a moment. The one thing I would just add to begin with is the development of the recovery priorities for Buchan in the first instance was a deeply community-embedded process. It involved a lot of engagement and surveys of local communities, and this was one of their key priorities, was the redevelopment of the recreation reserve. So at that point of identifying this as a priority, it was deeply informed by the community. In terms of the development of the project, etc., I'll throw to Renee to provide a bit more information about the community engagement that's involved.
Thank you, Stuart. So at the start of the project, at that initiation, a project reference group was developed. That was made up of all your sporting groups, your netball, tennis club, football club, cricket club, pony club, and the team were actively involved throughout the whole process, from that conceptual stage right through to the detailed design. Initially, we met up with that group regularly on a weekly basis, and as we got towards the end of the project, it went on to probably more of a monthly and when required. Also, the PRG group kept the community involved via newsletters and our Your Say page as well. As you can understand, we're at that delivery phase, so everybody is really excited as part of the project reference group to see all their hard work come to life. So, yeah.
Great. I gather this has been going on a lot longer than the flood event in Buchan. Was this project, the area where this development will happen, was that affected by the flood event at all?
I was probably 10.
Yeah, I'll just comment. So the Boxing Day flood event didn't impact directly on this area.
Okay, great.
As part of the overall redevelopment of the recreation reserve, the intention is to move any of the the facilities, particularly the pavilion, that might be impacted, up into the corner of the recreation reserve, which is higher and less flood prone. So that issue of flooding risk certainly has been one of the things that's been an important factor in informing the design of the overall project.
Yep.
But fortunately, the corner where the netball courts are was already the higher part of the site.
Very good, very good. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Uri. Councillors, are there any further questions? Councillor Reeves, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and through you. My question is twofold. The funding sources looks like an incredible who's who list, and I'm just wondering if the officers might just describe the complexities of that particular process and how we've arrived at that mixture of funding. And secondly, the tenure of the reserve and how that has provided issues or opportunities in this particular project.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Reeves, and through you, Mayor. I might just first say I might answer the last bit first, and then move on. So, in East Gippsland, we have a range of sporting facilities. Some are DECA managed facilities, some are the council managed facilities. This is a DECA managed facility, which really means there's a committee of management managing a recreation facility on DECA land, but it's not a council asset, and so that affects the way we're able to invest. And typically, council doesn't do capital investment on the land because it's not our asset to be looking after. In this case, and given the priority that the community has assigned to this, we worked with the community to assemble a range of funding sources that can support this project. And given delivering what will amount to about a $5 million project, is a complex project and carries a range of risks, Councilors has offered and stepped in to manage it, in a sense, on behalf of the community or on behalf of the Recreation Reserve Committee of Management. So it is different in that respect. You are right in saying there are a range of funding sources. You'll recall Council stepped in very early in the piece as one of the first funding commitments, where we drew funds from the Commonwealth LRCI program, made a commitment to put $1.2 million on the table for that. That was the first important commitment of the funding tranches, and then that followed up with particularly the $3 million allocation out of the Recovery and Resilience Grant, which Council again was instrumental in making sure we secured that money. The community and Council, and I think we should recognise the work of the community too in this, has also then set about trying to find at each opportunity the capacity to seek further funding through a range of sources, because the master plan for the site is bigger even than what's in front of us here. There's some other things that this doesn't cover, so the community will look to continue to progress those things over time. The one thing I would note is that because of a timing issue, the deadline for expenditure of that initial $1.2 million that Council committed from the LRCI program, that was expiring. So what we did was we used that on some other projects that Council had already committed to in its capital works program, and released Council cash from that. And so what appears in the budget now for this project is $1.2 million of Council cash, but really that's been an exchange with some Commonwealth grant funds. So I hope that explains what really has been a significant effort to gather up the funding required for this project, both from Council but also from community.
Yeah, Mr McConnell, thank you so much. It certainly does, and they're great points to note and remember and have on the record about the flexibility of officers and creativity in being able to bring this about. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Councillors, are there any further questions of officers? We do have a recommendation in the report. Do I have a mover? Councillor Reeves? And a second to Councillor Buckley, thank you. We'll just get that up on the screen. Councillor Reeves, for you to fill in the blanks.
Thank you, and the challenge I have is I'm only operating on one screen, so I need to just jump across and look at what I am supposed to look at down here. Excuse me.
You'll find that on page 288 of your agenda.
288 or 294? 294 is on my... Is that correct?
294.
Tender panel evaluation recommendation on page 294 in the confidential section there.
Yes, that's...
Thank you.
At the bottom
I
of the
can
page.
see the bottom of the page. Thank you. I just don't want to step out of line, councillors, and read the wrong recommendation. And it looks to me like it's Clint Kelly excavations should be inserted in there. And I'm hoping then that Vanessa might scroll up to that point in a moment for the sum of $870,224.59 excluding GST.
Yes, and that
Is that correct?
That is what we can see on the screen. Are you able to
Thank
see
you.
that?
Sorry,
also?
sorry for that clumsiness there. But
No, that's
so
okay.
dot point 2 accepts that tender submitted by Clint Kelly Excavations for contract 2024-1649R, Buchan Rec Reserve Netball Tennis Court, construction for the contract amount of $870,224.59 exclusive of GST. And that is what I am moving, councillors. I'm hoping somebody will second it.
Yes, Councillor Buckley, I believe you are seconding. Can you just confirm that contractor and that amount is correct for us, please?
Yes, Mayor, I can confirm.
Thank you very much. And
Thanks for
Councillor
seconding
Reeves,
that, Councillor Buckley. That's great.
would you like to speak to the motion?
Absolutely. This is such an important project for this community who have suffered disproportionately over the last years, and they have clearly said this is one of the key improvements and the key transformations in terms of their recovery. So I'm absolutely delighted to move this as the first of a number of stages in this project and that redevelopment of that rec reserve. As noted in my conversation and question of the officers, I just want to acknowledge the challenges and the opportunities that the officers have felt and then succeeded in providing in terms of being able to fund this because of the difficulties of grant acquittal processes and timelines. So I really want to acknowledge that. This is going to make a huge difference to this community and I'm really excited to see it. I also want to acknowledge that, as was noted by Mr McConnell, that there are some things that council doesn't do, but sometimes we need to be extremely flexible, and in terms of infrastructure on variable tenured locations, we can do this if it benefits the community, and we've done that this time tonight, councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Councillor Buckley, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. Look, I think it's wonderful that the Buchan community have been very patient with us and with the process, because it has taken a lot of time, and we're getting there. And having been a netballer who's played on at the Buchan Rec Reserve in the many moons ago, and my son being a footballer who has played in the past for Buchan, these are they're our neighbours, they're our friends. They suffered greatly. We should always support remote communities, and now that this is going forward, I hope that the process is a smooth one, and they're delivered a really good, nice new netball court, and it gives me hope and faith that perhaps Benambra will be next, and our smaller communities are going to be well catered for into the future. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Councillors, is the motion opposed? Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Uri, please go ahead.
Just to reiterate a lot of what's been said, congratulations to the Buchan community and particularly to all those people who've participated in the process, and congratulations and thanks to our staff for getting us to this point. Excellent.
Thank you, Councillor Uri. Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? No, in which case I will put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. And that moves us on to agenda item number 6, which is urgent business. And I don't believe there is any urgent business tonight, CEO.
Thank you, Mayor. No, I have received no urgent business. Thank you.
Excellent. Councillors, we'll now need to move into a closed meeting to consider some confidential items, items 7.1, 7.2. Councillors, I need a motion to move into confidential business pursuant to section 66(2) of the Local Government Act 2020 to consider these items. Thank you, Councillor Greason. Councillor Stowe, either of you like to speak to the motion? No. Is the motion opposed? Anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors, and bear with us, those people online, while we consider these confidential. passed. All those against, no. And welcome back, everybody, after those confidential deliberations. Thank you, councillors, members of the public who have been in attendance this afternoon, tonight, this evening, online, and also in person. And that brings us to the end of the council meeting for this evening at 8:34. Hope you all have a pleasant remainder of your evening.